Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. The network of global corporate control is another name for the central bankers. Today's program is live and is about a snowball that is going to continue to gather snow, rolling downhill until the central bankers are kicked out in every single place in the world. As you've learned on this series, the world's wealth is in the global debt facility. I am administering this wealth on behalf of humanity with the Coalition for the Rule of Law, thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer, Maurice Jackson, audio and prompter, and Cruce Starnes, floor director. The Bretton Woods institutions are another word for the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. They were created in order to return the world's wealth to the world's people. This is due to the greatest whistleblower of all time, Jose Rizal. In an earlier episode, we learned about Jose Rizal and how he set out to end the cruel Spanish colonial domination of the Philippines. After Rizal survived the firing squad in 1896, he went to the Vatican as Father Antonio Diaz and rose through the ranks, becoming the Superior General of the Jesuits in 1942. Between 1942 and 1946, Rizal melted the Vatican's gold in Singapore and then had his lawyer, Ferdinand Marcos, create a trust called the Global Debt Facility to assume ownership of this gold, along with other precious metals, gems, art treasures, and bonds that are now worth more than $2 quadrillion. In summary, the world's patrimony. The terms of this trust were agreed in 1950 among the world's rulers in the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. After 50 years, any previous claims over this wealth are invalid under the statute of limitations. The 189 ministers of finance and development on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF must authenticate any withdrawals from the global debt facility. In the 2 years since this series began, I've been busy invalidating the various attempts of the International Court of Justice, Christine Lagarde, and other assorted crooks to undo Ferdinand Marcos's and Jose Rizal's work on behalf of humanity. Everybody in the world who understands what's going on has been helping me. I call this group the Coalition for the Rule of Law. The power transition model from the U.S. National War College predicted the existence of the Coalition for the Rule of Law. The Coalition for the Rule of Law has been commenting when these weekly segments are uploaded on YouTube. I also tweet about how the banking cartel is working overtime to try and shape your perception of reality. I've already called out YouTube for hiding the most important of my responses behind View All Comments buttons and using sock puppets and other agents of the banking cartel to ask loaded questions. YouTube is owned by Google, which is part of the banking cartel, and YouTube didn't seem to mind that its shenanigans were on view. They've kept at it. Also, they're recommending banking cartel propaganda to the people who view the DCTV archives on my YouTube channel. This series has been coming to you weekly for 2 years. The 2 segments just before this one were about ending the Federal Reserve and avoiding World War III. The banking cartel tried to delete some of the more difficult questions and my responses on these segments. But when they tried to do that, they were caught red-handed. And they also tried to deny the validity of the treaty that was signed at the end of World War II and which governs how the world's wealth is administered by the 189 ministers of finance and development. This treaty, called the Bilateral Minefield Breakthrough Successor Agreement, was signed on behalf of the U.S. by President Truman and General Eisenhower. The central bankers bought up all the media, both mainstream and alternative media, and then they used poor education, electromagnetic weapons, and internet search engines to try and manipulate people. This has backfired. 2 days ago, I uploaded screenshots showing this corruption. The symbol used on YouTube to exit full screen is similar to the Teutonic Knights cross, German cross, Nazi flag, while the Swiss octagon symbol is similar to the swastika. And now we're going to show you some of the screenshots.
Such thing as mind control, and they're certainly not under the influence. That's usually a pretty good indicator that that's a person who is susceptible to mind control. Now, one of the other things I wanted to show you, and that's why we're doing these screenshots, is what YouTube uses as its symbol for exit full screen and how that's similar to other symbols. This is the symbol of the Teutonic Knights cross, and this is the symbol of the German cross. This is the symbol of the Nazi flag, and this is the symbol of the Swiss octagon. And this right here, that's the symbol that YouTube wants for exit full screen. And you can see in a product forum on Google that other people noticed this similarity, and they were saying it looks like a Nazi symbol. Would YouTube please remove it? Well, they never did. They were not responsive. Okay, now the other thing I wanted to show you, and we'll go into that in greater depth, is a tweet in Russia Insider, and this is really very significant. It is saying that Russia's largest bank has made the first transaction on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which is using gold to pay for the international trade between China and Russia. And what this means is that the United States, we have monetary gold reserves, so do all the nations, and we're going to be switching our currency out of the paper currency to use our monetary gold reserves. And that's the whole point of the global currency reset. And people who have been hearing about this are grateful. And of course, what I've been doing is I've been communicating with everybody because we are all working together on this reality. And what I've said in a comment was in the global currency reset, which has been agreed to by the Coalition for Law on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF, and this is the group that oversees the world's monetary gold reserves, all nations are moving into gold currencies. During this transition, we are winding down the banking cartel in the global debt facility, which contains the world's monetary gold reserves. The Bilateral Minefield Breakthrough Successor Agreement, agreed to on behalf of the United States by Truman and Eisenhower, is what governs. And I have put Donald Trump and the rest of the banking cartel's agents on notice that they are mere imposters and have no legitimacy. And this is what Donald Trump had tweeted. He said he was honored to serve as Commander-in-Chief to the courageous men and women of our U.S. Armed Forces. And I have said that he is an imposter. He is not the Commander-in-Chief, and that's because the U.S. Constitution of 1789 is not in force and effect, and the U.S. military has sworn its allegiance to the U.S. Constitution. So Donald Trump, he's He's just a play actor. He's a bit actor. He's an imposter. And I've also been talking about how the gold that belongs to the US is going to be minted in our currency. It handles just like paper. It's going to take a while to do. And so we're going to have currency issued by the US Treasury in the interim as an interim measure. But all of the countries of the world are going to be issuing their currency in gold. And this was a tweet that I had tweeted a number of years ago. What I'm telling you is that the ones who have the money are us in the Global Debt Facility, which is a trust administered by the World Bank and IMF. If you want to know what assets are in the Global Debt Facility, just look at the inventory list at the foot of a letter which was cleared by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. This letter says simply that the bankers owe us more than we owe them. This letter is our ticket to the global currency reset. Country debt is eliminated. Interest on country debt is eliminated. Our paper money is a scam and is getting replaced by real money from the Global Debt Facility and local currency that is going to be issued by our local villages and towns. The bankers appointed the president of the World Bank and the managing director of the IMF, but Kim and Lugar are under the control of the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. That is, the ministers of finance and development of the countries that belong to the World Bank and IMF. And I gave a legal opinion about that. I'm the lawyer for the Global Debt Facility that contains the world's wealth that is administered by
But
whom?
not all the people
Not the
are willing
bankers,
to put in
not
the effort
Kim and
to
Lugar.
figure out how they're being manipulated. This is not entirely their fault because they've been dumbed down with an inferior education that discourages critical thinking, and they are also surrounded with mind-dulling programming from the media that's owned by the banking cartel, all the while exposed to military extremely low-frequency electromagnetic weapons and other pacifiers like fluoride to try and keep people from thinking. The people who have found out about all of this are motivated, and they're also figuring out how to get through to the others. The corruption in the world's money system is not going to end the United States, its pensions, or land us in World War III. A critical mass of people are going to clean up the corruption. The central bankers' attempts to dominate the internet by search engine manipulation and Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency technologies are creating a backlash. That is the question, Karen. Thank you for saying it, and thank you for your outstanding presentations persisting through these years. We're closing in, circling the wagons. Can the amnesty offer be on billboards and other mainstream media to catch attention? Sometimes it seems we're secluded on the internet. And here's the question. How are we going to be able to function in a transition where the elite must acknowledge the direct way that they've been at fault and somehow continue in a process of cleaning up this corruption? The banking cartel tried every which way to censor this question. When I tried posting it on the internet at the Amazon Web Service, the link was broken so many times that I had to post the comment on another cloud at internet.org. You can view this post, and I'll put that in the teleprompter. The banking cartel is trying to land us all in World War III and prevent us from exchanging their corrupt paper currency for currency out of gold and local currencies by bribing people. Don't forget, the banking cartel is able to do this by simply printing more fiat money. This illustrates what happens when people allow bankers to issue their currency. One of the banking cartel agents tried a long time ago to bribe me this way, but I saw through the trap. I take your comments into account. The banking cartel is undone by our communicating this way. That's why they keep trying to block my links. The lies in the mainstream media have become very obvious. There are no satisfactory explanations for central issues, whether the United States Constitution of 1789 is in force and effect, the attempted nuke off the coast of Charleston on the 7th of October 2013, the assassination of JFK, the murder of Anton Scalia, 9/11. All of these problems are explained by the existence of the network of global corporate control, as reported by Vitaly Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich. The legal profession is a big part of the cover-up. My email to Yale Law School's new dean on the 21st of July calls the question. A non-response blows the lid off this corruption and cover-up. It's extremely embarrassing for Yale because I had exposed how the Yale Alumni Magazine was covering up the corruption of Yale Law School's previous dean. I went to Yale Law School with Robert Post, and we had some mutual friends. So when I wrote Robert Post in 2007 describing the corruption at the World Bank, he wrote me back. He also told me on the phone that he would help me, and then he changed his mind. Some of the ambassadors I wrote to in the early stages of the cover-up also wrote me back, as well as some of the members in Congress, like Senator Lugar. Senator Grassley's aide on the Senate Finance Committee, Chris Armstrong, was also actively trying to end the cover-up of corruption at the World Bank until Senator Grassley fired him. It turns out that the corruption was not just at the World Bank, it was in the entire world. But Jose Rizal and his lawyer Ferdinand Marcos created the World Bank with enough bells and whistles to clean up the corruption. In the 2 years that we've been airing this series, we have created a lot of booby traps to undermine the banking cartel. These traps have a cumulative effect. Today, we're springing the legal profession booby trap. Next week's segment is going to talk about the slavery and the martial law booby traps. The banking cartel, shielded by lawyers, accountants, and journalists, thinks that the pillage will never end. And so let me read you an email that I sent on the 21st of July to the Yale Alumni Magazine editor about Heather Gerken, who replaced Robert Post as the dean of Yale Law School on the 1st of July. Your feature, Light and Verity, is more aptly called Darkness and Lies. Your article on Heather Gerken is tone deaf from the get-go. You start with the fact how widely recognized it is that lawyers have disgraced themselves, and yet you seem to feel that this is somehow no longer the case due to the fact that some lawyers have been fighting Trump's travel ban for travelers from majority Muslim nations. And you said, at least in blue states, people have become more inclined to hug a lawyer than to slug one. You point out that Heather Gerken is an expert in election law, yet somehow you think it's okay to remain silent about the fact that Donald Trump was never elected as president of the U.S. because the Constitution of 1789 was not in effect. Robert Post, a constitutional lawyer, also snookered the good people in the United States and the rest of the world. Robert Post refused to tell people how the U.S. Constitution of 1789 has not been in effect ever since the Civil War, and that the U.S. Congress kept the U.S. under martial law by declaring a state of emergency. Meanwhile, the banking cartel, shielded by lawyers, accountants, and journalists, such as yourself, apparently think that the pillage will never end. Not if I and the rest of humanity, together with the wealth of the world, including the U.S. monetary gold reserves, which were deposited by Eisenhower and Truman, not if we can help it. And then I signed the letter. And we'll see what the Yale Alumni Magazine has to say. In the DCTV segment on September 13th, 2016, we discussed what the Alumni Magazine and Yale Law School and the rest of the legal profession were covering up. The cover-up is unsustainable. Lawyers have got to concede the emperor is naked. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to repeat what I had said in the previous segment about the cover-up. Many of you know that I'm a lawyer. There's only one classmate from my law school, Yale, who is still talking to me, and this classmate is now retired from the practice of law. I've been calling the legal profession corrupt for many years. One of my most popular tweets was taken after the International Law Weekend in New York at the end of October last year. This tweet has disappeared from my Twitter and Facebook accounts, but I still have the selfie I tweeted against the Manhattan skyline. I took the selfie after a meeting of the executive board of the American branch of the International Law Association. I was the sole dissenting vote of the board of the American branch of the International Law Association. I learned at that meeting that my role was to serve as a voice in the wilderness, and that the rest of the legal profession was going to remain corrupt. The American branch of the ILA had just changed the branch into a corporation in order to escape from accountability for corruption. I've never looked back. Whether I'm the sole dissenting vote or whether I'm joined by 189 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, my path is laid out straight on the yellow brick road. We, the people, are returning to gold in our international money system. Towns and villages can devise their own currencies, and countries can choose to have money based on silver or other assets instead of gold if they want. But we are not going to have paper currencies that are based on debt, and we are not going to be paying any interest to bankers who have issued this paper money for free and have the nerve to charge us for that scam called country debt. So, what is this corruption in the legal profession? The legal profession is lying to you all and is covering up the existence of a huge company that's printing paper money and buying up the companies on the world's capital markets with their paper money, and is bribing politicians with their paper money. This series on DCTV is called The Network of Global Corporate Control. The series has the same name as the title of a study in 2011 by three systems analysts, Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich, one of the best universities in Europe. The network of global corporate control has been with humanity throughout our recorded history and before. But this network of global corporate control is now bankrupt and has been placed into receivership by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. The network of global corporate control is getting wound down, and its paper currencies are being exchanged for the world's international monetary gold reserves in a global currency reset. I've been on a collision course with the rest of the legal profession for many years. Today, I'm going to prove that the rest of the legal profession is simply corrupt and nothing more. Let's start out by showing the kinds of accolades and rewards that go to those lawyers who join the rest of their corrupt brotherhood and simply lie, betraying their ethics and morals. Here is the cover page for an article on Robert Post, the Dean of Yale Law School, that just came out in Yale's Alumni Magazine. You can read this article for yourself, and I've got a link in the teleprompter. I will just read you one of the sentences in that article. Post has spent much of his career illuminating the disheveled state of First Amendment law. This sentence says that that's now the former dean of Yale Law School, is a constitutional law scholar. On the 3rd of September 2016, I tweeted Senate Report 93-539. This report states that the United States Constitution has been suspended annually by the U.S. Congress ever since March 9, 1933. The U.S. Congress has been declaring that the United States is in a national emergency. The United States is not governed under the Constitution of 1789 at all. Why didn't Dean Post think of telling anybody that the Constitution does not apply and is not in effect now? On the 12th of December 2014, I asked a legal expert on Senate procedure that the National Conference of State Legislatures brought to address state legislatures at their NCSL forum. That's Marty Gold, who's a partner in the New York office of Sidley Austin, Brown & Wood. I asked him whether the U.S. Constitution of 1789 was in force. His answer: he didn't know the answer. Here is what I tweeted about my question to Marty Gold. The planned demolition of the Federal Reserve Note was intended to unilaterally surrender United States military might. The world's gold is in the global debt facility and on offer to the United States and the rest of the world's nations to replace their paper currencies with national currencies containing gold. There will be an end to legal tender laws, and villages and municipalities may issue local currencies. Nations may also back their currencies with other commodities. The county executives of America have accepted the United States' share of gold in the global debt facility. It's 90 to 95% likely that the Federal Reserve Note is replaced before its planned demolition. I originally gave the following link, but that shill, Jason Erb, removed my comment. The National Conference of State Legislatures was established by the network of global corporate control to usher in the new world order. Marty Gold, a partner in Sidley Austin, Brown & Wood, was billed by the National Conference of State Legislatures as one of the foremost experts on Senate procedure. And on the final day of the NCSL forum, Mr. Gold led a discussion on what is wrong with the Senate and what its future is in the next Congress. And we're scrolling down because people are telling me that it's time to wrap up. In the meantime, I wanted to say it's really quite telling that there's been no response at all. We've not heard from any of the embassies, which I've been writing. We haven't heard from Donald Trump, who had to give an answer, and he didn't. This silence is very telling. This means that we are actually in the middle of the global currency reset. I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We have discussed in today's segment the remarkable efforts of humanity working together in an unbroken chain. Until next week,